Hello and welcome to Professor Pincushion. I've heard from a lot of beginner sewers and a lot of people want to know, what do I even need to purchase in order to get started? Well, in this tutorial, I'm going to be focusing on the basic tools you need in order to start with your new hobby. So let's go ahead and take a look. At some fabric stores, you can actually get a sewing starter kit, and it should have most of the tools that you see here. I'm just going to go over the basic things you're going to need in order to get started with sewing. First and foremost, you're going to need some scissors, and you can see I have two pairs up here. This one is regular household scissors, which I use for cutting out paper items such as my pattern pieces, and this one is strictly for fabric only. And the reason is because once you start using your scissors in order to cut out items like paper, the paper will start to dull the blade, and you'll notice it won't cut out fabric as well. So this one, fabric only, this one is for everything else. Now, if you have an old pair of scissors that you want to use for your fabric, I would take it to a professional and have the blades sharpened. Next, you're going to need some measuring tools. If you're going to do garment sewing, you're going to want to pick up a tape measure because this is going to be helpful in taking your measurements. Then I have this tool called a sewing gauge. Now, if you're just going to use a regular ruler, you could just use that. This one I like though because it's small, compact, and it has this little slider. So when I'm doing things like hems, I can just move the slider where I need it to be, and it just makes it easier for me to glance at it and see what I need to measure up. Everybody, especially beginners, needs a seam ripper. If you make a mistake, this is the easiest thing to use in order to take your stitches out. So definitely want to pick up one of these. Next, let's take a look at our fabric marker and then also fabric chalk. You're going to have to mark your fabric at some point. Usually I like to have more than one, so I have a few different options to play with. The first one here, this pen is actually a blue marker for fabric, and what it does is after you mark it, you can get rid of your marks by using a damp cloth. But the problem is if I'm using a fabric that is dry clean only and then I use water on top of that, you could get water spots, which is a bad thing. So then maybe I'm going to use the fabric chalk instead. But if I just have this, I might have a problem if my fabric is white. Usually you can get fabric chalk in a few different colors just for that option. Also, there is another fabric marker which disappears after 48 hours and you don't even need any water. Lastly, let's talk about pins and needles. So you need a pincushion, some straight pins, and for a beginner, I would say just get the ballpoint straight pins, and they usually have the little colored balls on the end, which makes it a little bit easier if you drop one on the floor in order to spot it. So that's why they have those on there, and they're easy, makes it easy for grabbing them out of the pincushion and it doesn't go all the way into it. For the sewing needles, even if you plan on doing machine sewing, using a sewing machine, chances are you're going to find out that you're still going to be doing a little bit of hand sewing. It's really hard to drop all hand sewing. So I just like to pick up a package of assorted needles, or if you're just going to buy one package, you can go ahead and just get the sharp needles, but I like the assorted. Lastly, I just like to have a couple of safety pins. You can see I have one here, I have one pinned here, and these just seem to come in handy all the time. So that's just a good thing to have on hand as well. Chances are you have the next item already at home, and this is going to be an iron and ironing board. Now with the iron, you don't really need anything fancy, but what I would like to point out is it's very important that you have an iron in which you can actually determine the heat setting. So I can do just minimum heat, or I can do really, really hot. And that's because different fabrics need a different heat temperature. So if it's something delicate like silk, you don't want to do it at a very, very hot setting. Or if it's something polyester, you want it at more of a lower heat setting. Also, I like to have one that has the capability of doing a spray or doing steam. But that isn't essential. You can also use a spray bottle that has a fine mist if you want to do it. I just like using it, so if it's a fabric that can take a high heat, like a 100% cotton, sometimes it makes it really handy for getting out the wrinkles or getting a really nice press. But you definitely need an iron to do pressing in fabric. Just make sure that that if your iron does have the capability of having a water compartment, it is not an iron that's going to leak water. Again, because if you have the delicate fabrics or something that can get water spots, You don't want it to be sputtering and leaking all over your fabric. Lastly, let's talk about the sewing machine, because I know a lot of people have questions on what machine to get and how to get it and all that. Now this machine I've been using forever and it looks really fancy, but I just want to point out, as a new sewer, you do not need a sewing machine that can do a million stitches, because what you're going to find out, and what I found out, is 95% of the time you're just doing a regular straight stitch, you're doing a zigzag stitch, or possibly you're doing a buttonhole stitch. Small percentage of time you may be using other stitches, but 95% of the time it seems like that is the stitches that you're using. So if you get a basic machine that can do those stitches for your first one, then you should be perfectly fine for quilting, for sewing garments, and all that stuff. And this is why I recommend getting the basic machine, because you can get one for probably a little less, or around $100. So before you start investing in a machine that can do all the bells and whistles that you want to do a basic machine first. Find out what kind of sewing you want to do. Do you want to focus on quilting? Do you want to do embroidery? And then once you get comfortable with the basic machine and comfortable with what direction you want to take your sewing, then you can invest in a more expensive machine. But the basic will get you 99% of the way there. Now, of course, when you're looking to actually shop for a sewing machine, a good idea is going to your local fabric store, seeing if they actually have a sewing machine department. If they actually have a department, chances are someone is going to work in that department. They can walk you through the different machines. You can test drive the machines, see what you like. Also, what I recommend doing is going online, searching for sewing machines that you can purchase from some of the larger online retailers. And you can actually read the reviews of people that have purchased a machine, and they can tell you if they like it, if they don't like it, what they like and don't like, and everything like that. And that way you can gauge what actual people that are using the machine like about that machine, and make a decision based on that, on whether or not you want to purchase that machine or a different one. Once you have a machine that you're kind of leaning towards because it seems like a lot of people like it, then what you can do is, again, go online, put in that brand and model, and find out the best prices to suit your needs. Make sure to check out our other videos and visit ProfessorPincushion.com to view our complete library with well over 150 sewing video tutorials. New tutorials are released regularly, so make sure to subscribe to be notified of the next release. Thanks for watching!